Alright, let's focus on the mouth. We're starting off kind of like we did for the eyes as well, where we're blocking out the overall volume for it. You got to think that this here has like a barrel shape because there is you have teeth behind it.
It's always like it's always the way we're referring to it. We call it the barrel of the mouth because it's just like you just have a barrel that's like a volume on top of the skull there. So this is the same thing. The way I would block it out as well. This is something we've done for a long time and it works really, really well. You just if you add the volume before adding the lips, it just helps you settle the lips in the face a little better, in my opinion. And it can also, it's a good way to sort of, depending on what reference you're using and what model you're trying to do, it can help you with that. If it's an African face, then you would have a much more pronounced barrel than like a Caucasian or an Asian face. That'd be more recessed. So that really helps to get that across even before you start adding details like the lips.
And then once you have the barrel, then like what you can see we did is basically just carve it in. It doesn't matter what brush you use to carve it in, just carve in the lips. And then you're just focusing on like the line going around the lips and just some general volumes in it. I also like to block in the bit of a chin as well, and a bit of the nasolabial fold like we talked about in the theory chapter, just so you have some structure around it as well. Filtrum as well, just block it in. Stuff rarely works in isolation, so if you are doing lips, I really like to have just some of the surrounding areas there as well. And here you can see the shape we were talking about, like how I prefer to block it into the top lip into 3 parts. So the middle part there is just very pronounced. But again, look at your reference. Don't just listen to what we're saying. Actually look at the reference.
Yeah, and the relationship between upper and lower lip, again, so dependent on individual variation. You know, some people have a really big lower lip, some people have big upper lip, and some have both of them. Yeah. For the lower lip in particular, you tend to have these two tubercles that sort of meet in the middle, but they're not the same width and thickness all the way across. Like they'll have this point in the middle, it'll be more pronounced, and then it sort of fades off towards the corner of the mouth. You can see it's a lot sharper there in the middle, and it fades off towards the corner of the mouth.
I would also recommend that when you're doing your own studies here, just look at, just bring in the C tool, which ships along with it. Which first off, it has all the notes, which you saw in the theory chapter, but also it has the actual shape of it. Disable polypainting, and you can just see exactly what's going on. And then you kind of have like it's not a scan, but you have like a 3D reference to actually look at.
Yeah. An interesting note is the part above the upper lip is concave or convex, meaning that it goes out and not in. Like it doesn't actually, it's not like a slide that goes in, and actually goes out. So it's like convex. That's the word.
Yeah, I was confused about concave and convex, but then I learned that concave has a cave in it, and a cave goes in.
You go into a cave.
So throw a little word, flip almost for you.
Throw a word, but I still fucked it up. Convex.
Uh-oh, what did Henning do here? This is an annoying issue that if you're using the clay brushes, you might just sculpt through it. Fairly easy to fix. You can just mask off the region in the back with topology masking, like we're doing now, and then just squeeze it, move it in, and just smooth it out.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. The back of it, you literally don't care about. You don't want to have issues.
Yeah.
Fixed.
There we go.
There we go.
There's so many, and I think in terms of just the story of your character, so much of that also comes through the mouth, because we were talking about you want a more female looking mouth, then you may want to make them more sort of like luscious lips. If it's a more villain type of character, then really minimize how much volume is in the lips and stuff. So you would have to think about the story of your character in order to like figure out what kind of lips you want.
And also, what kind of lips is really like one the ways you can express in your face. Like you can't emote through your ears or your forehead or like the back of the head or something. But two of the main parts you actually emoting through, just making facial expressions and telling your emotions would be the mouth and your eyes.
Yeah.
if you're smiling or if you're frowning or screaming or, whatever it is you're doing that through your mouth. So a mouth is incredibly expressive. So you want to make a friendly character? Make it smile. Want an evil character? Make him have an evil mouth.
Yeah, and it can be super subtle things like a little bit of an asymmetrical smirk, going up or down, or one part is more recessed or something. Like very tiny changes in the mouth and the eyes really have a big impact on your character.
Yeah, asymmetry I think is so important. You can do this study here 100% without symmetry. If you're doing a full character, I recommend working with symmetry. But for studies, I mean, a study like this might only take you a few hours.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about without symmetry, you might talk a few hours more for a study, but you're going to for sure have more life into it. Because if you just enable a symmetry at the end, that might just be a slight shape change where one part is a bit higher up. But if you sculpt it without symmetry in its entirety, then you have organic asymmetry in the entire thing. Like fundamentally, it's not symmetrical.
The way I like to think about the lower lip here is this gender difference. For men, I like to make it more square. Like I make parts of it so it goes down and it's kind of like a box that sits in the face. And for women, I tend to make it a rounder shape just because it's more soft. So here you can see, and he's making it more square as well. Like you have that, like the lip is kind of divided. So you have the actual lip part where the tubercles are, and that extends all the way out to the corner of the mouth, even though there's not a lot of volume there.
And notice in the corner of the mouth as well how deep it actually goes in.
Yeah.
It's not just a little dimple, like it actually goes quite deep in, which is something we're going to accentuate a bit later on as well. Get the nasolabial fold in there. I know we're missing a nose. It looks a bit weird, but get it in there just because it's a huge part of it. It just frames the mouth more.
And like we talked about in the anatomy lecture for the mouth, the skin and fat underneath the lower lip has so much individual variation as well, especially between genders and also between races. That's a very, very distinct sort of...
And your age.
And your age as well,
your fat percentage. And everything.
Yeah, you actually have a lot of fat there. You get this really interesting build-up on more heavyset people.
The way I like to think about these studies here compared to doing like what we did in our last video, which was our last premium series, which is sculpting the whole face. That's kind of like a boxing match. Like the one Morten did, you're actually doing the fight. This is doing push-ups. This is preparing for it by itself. I mean, maybe you can use this as an individual portfolio piece, but most likely you'll be more interested in actual like final pieces. But these kind of things are still important. This is kind of like building up general strength. You're practicing for something, and it's a great way of doing it. It's like kind of like in a boxing fight. Sure, you could build up strength purely from boxing, or you could build up strength by doing an isolated strength exercise. That way of thinking about it at least just helps me just to figure out that you shouldn't just do your key pieces. There is a way to actually practice as well.
Yeah, it's like if you were doing a marathon, right? It's pointless to only run marathons.
Yes.
You kind of want to do small mini marathons to prepare for the big marathon. Even though you didn't complete a marathon yet, you know that, okay, once I start the marathon, I'll be able to finish it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Because if you're practicing for a marathon by doing a marathon, now you just did a marathon.
Yeah, maybe you blew out your knee and you died.
And also because it takes so much more time. If to do a final piece, let's say you're not just doing a study, but you're doing like a full-on character with body and everything. It could easily take you weeks to do. Particularly if you're new, it would take you so much time to do.
Months.
Months. And if you're new to it as well, then by the time you're finished with it, you are so much better than you were in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I really recommend doing more studies like this where you don't learn as much, but you learn one thing better.
Yeah.
You learn how to make really good lips, and by the time it comes to do your marathon or to do your final sculpt, you don't have to learn how to make lips. You just have to make the lips of the character.
Yeah, there's a different challenge in doing a complete face versus doing isolated pieces Whereas if you were to, you could put each of these pieces onto a face. But if you've never done a face before, it wouldn't necessarily look good.
No.
Because you still don't have the skill to put it all together. So it's important to sort of find a good balance between just doing studies and doing final pieces. Because you learn different things from different kinds of assignments.
Yeah, if you only have a portfolio of these kind of things and then somebody asks you to, hey, can you make a full character? You're like, maybe.
Yeah.
Because so much of the challenge when doing a full character is the interplay between the shapes. How you make the nose might influence the design of the eyes. If you have facial expressions, like you pull up your eyebrow, your nose start to wrinkle. Everything is connected in a weird way. Now you can see as well, I'm just going in with a smaller brush and just working across the form. We have a video on our YouTube channel called Learn to Sculpt Like a Pro, or something akin to that, where we talk specifically about sculpting technique. And basically the sculpt technique we're talking about there is what we use for most of our things.
Yeah.
It's like once you understand general sculpting technique, then you feel you can kind of sculpt everything. It's kind of like unlocking a new ability.
I think an interesting part is that you could essentially watch a handful of our videos, right? And that would be all the information you would ever need to know about sculpting.
Yes.
Well, the difference is, especially when you're starting out, it can be really hard to try and apply what you're saying to a mouth, apply that to the rest of the face. Because in the beginning, you need some more specific examples in order to truly understand it. As you get more and more advanced, you learn to sort of extrapolate that information and use it in other things. We just talked about that in terms of texturing, for example. A lot of the stuff that we talk about for sculpting and modeling and design can be directly applied to texturing. But I think a lot of people in the beginning, they don't realize this.
Yeah, if we're saying that, like sculpting a mouth is like texturing a house, people are like, what the hell are these guys talking about? But once you've been texturing for a little bit and you understand the overall approach for everything in art is general to specific, learn the fundamentals. And, there are some universal truths here, but you kind of got to know them to understand it. I was speaking to a friend of mine recently who was trying to write his own movie, and the way his approach there, I can learn from his approach at writing and directing and become a better sculptor from that. Because the way you're making a universe and whatever could also be the same way you're making a character design. But if you tell somebody who's brand new to that, they're going to be like, what the hell are they talking about? They're clearly different things, but like, look, they're the same. But they're not. One is texturing a house, another one is sculpting a mouth.
Yeah.
So, like Morten said, a lot of the stuff we're talking about could be distilled into 2 videos, but if you're new and you need to learn how to sculpt a mouth, you just have to see somebody sculpt a mouth.
I remember that in the beginning. I was when I was starting out with 3D, I was doing a digital tutors tutorial on how to do superheroes, I remember.
Ooh, exciting.
And all I wanted was like see the complete character process. But they didn't. They showed me like the essentials and what to do, and because I was just starting out, I didn't know what any of it meant. What I thought I needed was I need to see a guy do a superhero from beginning to end, then I will know how to do a superhero. But that's just not how it works.
No, it's like if how to write a book, and you were to see Stephen King write the book, but like, all right, that just showed me how Stephen King writes a book.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many more fundamentals you have to know. It's again going back to like a marathon thing. If you were to just be like, okay, how do you do a marathon? And you just see some marathon runner running a marathon, you're like, cool, that taught me nothing.
Yeah.
Because
you have to experience it on your own body.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how do you prep your own body to do a marathon?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you don't have the strength, you don't have the physical capacity to do it yourself yet.
Just to talk about lips.
Oh, that's weird.
I just want to note that what's happening in the video right now in terms of wrinkling, you have very different kinds of wrinkles on the upper lip versus the lower lip.
Yeah.
Why they do that, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe just the way the skin is built up or something, but upper and lower lip are different. And so you can't apply the same type of style, in terms of wrinkles to both of them. Like the upper lip is generally split into 2 kinds of wrinkles. You'll have a finer wrinkle closer to the vermilion border, and then you have a bigger wrinkles towards the inside of the mouth. Whereas the lower lip generally has one kind of wrinkle that just sort of fans out from the center, kind of like in a circle.
And that's why we look at reference. This is not something we didn't read the book on how to sculpt faces. No. All this comes from observing. And notice there is no wrinkle brush used here. There is no quick skin pore thing. All this is just sculpted in. We don't rely on anything automatic to happen here. You might be able to. Maybe
we are making mouth brushes, though.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
So in not too long, people will actually be able to just drag it out. But that's not the point.
No, unless you live in the future where we have released our mouth brushes. Yeah, and then you could spice this up with alphas on top of it. You could go on afterwards with like sexy little pores and whatever breakup you might do. But we can guarantee you, the later you do that, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because then you just get smaller and smaller frequency with your sculpting, and you reach a point where you can't sculpt that frequency, or you can, but it's just inconceivably time-consuming. I really enjoy sculpting these like old man wrinkles as well, because there's so much weight in them. There's so much interest, asymmetry. And like we said with the eye as well, remember there is gravity in it. If you're sculpting lips like this, skin is going to droop down. Might not be flapping in the air or whatnot, because that would be quite funny. But it respects gravity. Everything respects gravity.
Except for black holes.
Yes.
I think.
Unless you're sculpting a black hole. I don't even know.
Yeah, who knows?
When it comes to black holes, I go, yeah, let's let somebody else deal with that.
A fun fact, which I think we've mentioned before, is lips don't sweat.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think it's one of the only parts of your body that don't produce sweat, because there are no sweat glands. So that's also why you often see cracked lips. And because the mouth can't moisturize itself, basically. Especially on bigger lips, that becomes more apparent.
Yeah, this guy here, he's a bit of trouble.
Yeah, he's lived in the cold winter mountains of Norway somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. He's been out in -10 and he just had a shower.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Do you know in Antarctica it gets to -60?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's intense. Yeah. So that'd be bad for your lips.
Yeah.
Don't live there. With the penguins.
I'm just having so much fun with sculpting these kind of things. It's just you rotating around and just sculpting across the form. Same brush, a little bit of smooth brush occasionally, a little bit. But normally, whatever I do, I just go in and just use a smaller and smaller frequency. I just find that the smooth brush just kills the form, kills everything interesting. And now it's all asymmetry. There's literally been no symmetry on this for the last minutes or so. Just building it up. So I don't just do asymmetry as a last little thing. Like I actually build up a fair portion of the model without symmetry.
Yeah. The way I like to think about it is that I want to get my overall form down with symmetry on, just because that's the hard part. And that's what takes the longest.
Yeah.
Once you get into this kind of detailing, you should have gone away from symmetry a while ago. But then at this point as well, then you can go back with asymmetry and adjust the expression. Like we talked about, give it a little smirk. Is it looking sad? Is it lopsided a little bit here and there?
Yeah. What am I trying to do here? It was just looking a bit too...
it does look funny without the nose, right?
Yeah.
It's
like it's missing something.
Yeah.
So now I'm just trying to find a clever way of bringing that down.
Clever enough.
Yeah, clever enough. What you can also do at the very end to make it feel more sculptural, which is a total hack, is to go over with the clay brushes and just kill the borders. Instead of it looking perfect, you just make some brush strokes.
Yeah.
I used to do that for all my sculpts, kind of like this, and then be like, whoa, your sculpting technique is so advanced, how do you do it? And I showed it to them, and they're like, oh. You used just regular brushes, and there wasn't some like super rough, fancy trick, it was just go in and screw them up afterwards.
That's what people want.
Yes.
People want that magical brush that can do everything. Doesn't exist.
You get an AI brush in ZBrush. We all lose our jobs. And all these subtle things, they really add to the overall quality of it. It's one of these you can't necessarily see all of them, but you can feel them if you have enough of them.
Yeah, but also what's important here is to think about the difference in terms of detail. Like, not everywhere is detailed to the same degree. You know, not everything has the same amount of fine details. You kind of want to try and art direct that, no matter which feature you're trying to sculpt, whether it's the eyes, nose or mouth, ears. If you have the same level of detail, like fine level of detail everywhere, then it's going to be hard for your viewer to know where to look. Like, you wouldn't, these tiny, tiny wrinkles, tiny imperfections on the lips here, you wouldn't want to put those everywhere because you don't want to draw too much attention to other places on the face per se.
Yeah, I tend to put more details where I want the viewer to look. Just like you said, just really art directed, really focus the viewer. So if I put all this around the nasolabial fold, you'd be like, what on earth is going on? Or you could do it if you are deliberate about it as a composition. But most likely you don't care too much about that right now. You're not making an art piece, you're doing a study.
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever it comes to old people as well, I really just prefer just to do a lot low frequency or mid frequency breakup, like on his chin here. Just really just mess that up. Really just give it a nice and broken feel. But not just random features, but stuff which supports the underlying bone structure, kind of like we're doing now. I think it's so interesting watching myself sculpt like this.
Yeah.
This particularly because it's sped up as well, so it just looks like when you're just doing it, you know, you're just like, it doesn't feel fast to you, but when you see it sped up, you're like, damn.
Yeah. And then you remember it's sped up, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Wish I could sculpt this fast. That'd be terrifying, though.
Man, it'd be a sculpting machine.
My poor Wacom.
Go through like 2 nibs every day.
Yeah, at least. It's like we said, whenever you're sculpting, if it's a realistic man or female or whatever it is, the difference in lips is all proportion and frequency of detail.